This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends talking nerdy.
This is the podcast making, public transit taking, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, son of a gun, Tim the Nerd, welcoming you to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy, part of the Deluxe Edition Network. Head to deluxeeditionnetwork.com to find out about all of the lovely shows on the den. And speaking of lovely, sitting next to me, we have the most electrifying professor in podcasting today, Professor Aubrey.
Well, hello there.
Now, when it comes to two pretty perfectly people like us, one thing we don't have to worry about is fixing partners, right?
Right, we're pretty perfect and we choose perfect partners.
Exactly, every single time, and we don't have over 300 episodes to prove otherwise.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, well, in relationships, at times you can find yourself with the mindset of trying to save your partner, whether it's a long-term project, whether it's a short-term project. It can happen in your relationship, but one thing you have to consider is that, even though you can help somebody, at the end of the day, it's all about them making the moves to change themselves in a relationship, right?
Absolutely. You can't make someone change. Like that is a very good lesson to learn. And you can support people, but you should do that with your eyes wide open, realizing that you're not earning anything from that.
Indeed. And the reason we bring this up here is because for our main event this week, we're going to be talking about an article from our friends at Psychology Today called Stop Trying to Fix Your Partner. Here are 5 tips to help by Dr. Rachel Allen, PhD. I mean, that would be awesome to have like a PhD type of thing. And like, I would just go to everybody I would be so annoying. Like, I'm Dr. Tim. Yeah, Tim Jasmine.
I mean, I believe they work really hard for that. I know I did my JD.
You totally.
You would be really proud of it. I'm really proud of it.
You should be proud of it. It does take dedication to get that. But me, I just want it for like MD, But anyway, stop trying to fix your partner. Here are 5 tips to help. What we do for articles like this on Psychology Today, if you're a first-time listener to our show, and by the way, welcome, is go through the bullet points that are listed in the article and open up some conversation, talking about our own life experiences and our thoughts on this article. And more, at the end of the day, in our show description, you will have a link to the entire article, and we encourage you to take some time to check it out and also other work from that author.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
for this particular article,
yes,
I think that we should take a moment and give some information that she gives in the beginning of her article that will give some context to the points.
Well, set the stage for us, counselor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So one of the most important things she says is that the desire to change someone, that is someone who is not available emotionally or in some other way is not perfect for their partner, and they spend a lot of time trying to change their partner, that is born of childhood trauma. And the kind of trauma that makes you feel like if you could only get people to love you, everything in the world would be perfect for you. And somehow that you can earn love by being good and getting other people to love you. So that's kind of the mindset. I mean, I think you have to think about people with the traumatic childhood experience who, unbeknownst to them, in trying to change their partner, they're trying to control their partner. And they're actually not being a good partner. And so here are 5 ways that you can try to avoid that. The article also points out that sometimes what happens for people who are in that situation is that they will try to change someone and make them into a good partner. They do that work, all of that emotional labor. Then the person and they break up. And in the person's next relationship, they're the perfect partner, at least from looking outside. And they end up with the perfect partner. And it feels like if you're the other person that you helped create this creature and now they're getting all the benefit while potentially you are alone.
Yes, and I think also too the article did bring up that sometimes not taking the time to explore the trauma that is affecting your life can essentially make deja vu happen all over again, if that makes sense. You can find yourself going from relationship to relationship to relationship, finding the same things happening again. And if that is the case, you are experiencing that, then maybe it's not necessarily the other people at the end of the day. It's something about you that would have to be changed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's look at the tips.
All right. How about I dive in with number 1?
Okay. Sounds great.
All right. Number 1, make the subconscious conscious. Name your pattern and see it for what it is. There can be an epiphany to realize that you were the common denominator in your relationship history. That realization can be the end of excuses and the beginning of empowering yourself to change the people you choose, the quality of your interactions, and whether you stay or let go. And I've talked about this on the show before myself when it came to like my marriage, when it came to leaving Apple the way I did, and other stuff that I brought up in a similar vein. Like, I was making that big mistake. I was hoping things would change. And at the end of the day, I didn't realize that I was part of the problem because I had that mindset of things can change, things can change. And
If I'm just good enough,
yes,
things will change.
yes. And I had to really readjust my mindset. Now, I'm still working through that, and that will be a lifetime thing at this point because I've had 47 years of building up to this, so hopefully it won't be 47 more years to get to the point where, oh, you're great, but I'm in a walker at that point. But it takes the time, especially if you do notice things repeating over and over again in different, relationships, or, I think work has a similar
Oh, yeah.
type of thing to when it comes to relationships. If you're finding you are those same types of issues are happening again and again and again, look inwards.
Absolutely. That is the first step in any kind of healing journey, is recognizing that pattern, making the subconscious conscious, that is stopping doing things automatically and actually be thoughtful about your actions. Those things are really hard to do.
They are definitely hard to do because if we're talking about a relationship ending, there potentially could be a lot of animosity going on, a lot of anger. Maybe things on the surface are civil, but beneath, you're like, fuck them type of deal. And sometimes that can be deserved, but that still doesn't mean you shouldn't look inward to examine what could I have done? Or what could I have not done? What could I have done different type of deal? Look inwards.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a postmortem, but I think I'm not sure that thinking about what you did wrong is really that helpful.
I get
Certainly as a first step.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. It's just, if anything, I guess try and pull yourself back from the situation a little bit to think of things more objectively and not based on the passion of I was wronged,
And that's not the only emotion. Like there's also like deep hurt, confusion. So,
Everything.
like, some people get angry, some people cry uncontrollably, some people beat up on themselves, some other people beat up on other people. So it's just a maladaptive pattern, and the patterns are very different,
Indeed.
but
Speaking
they
of
come from the same place, which is childhood trauma.
speaking of that, I think that's perfect time to dive into number two.
Number two.
Number two.
So, not number two like that. Okay, just as I did, number two says, name that this stems from childhood trauma, which created a tendency to fantasize about love and the potential of love to save you. I'm not trying to be a downer about the beauty and potential of love, but if it's not coming from a healthy place, it becomes two people stuck in a trauma bond. Yeah. So you can also be trying to trauma bond and have the other person be so much, having better mental health hygiene is not in that same situation. Or like this tip points out, you might both be in the same boat. In either case, you're both reacting to things that happened when you were a kid, and not just physical abuse is traumatic. There are lots of things, serious illness, a death of a close family member or friend, neglect in a not like I'm not going to feed you kind of way, but in a I'm not interested in you kind of way. Along with, sexual assault, incest, all of the typical horrid, terrifying things that happen to children.
So much trauma out there, unfortunately. I also do appreciate the fact that this bullet point did point out about the idea of the fantasy of love.
Mm-hmm.
Too many people believe in the sappy pop songs that they sing about love, whether it be something from the '60s or earlier or later or whatever. And it's it's sadly, I think, one of those things that people just have to learn on their own, because like, the reason I say that is this: like, if somebody had sat me down in my 20s to tell me about all this about the love topics that we've talked about, the fact that love is not love is not this fantastical idea that will just cure everything, that life happens, that you can love someone and still not be right for them, I don't know if I would have listened.
Sure. I mean, I think people said things to me when I was a young adult that I still remember. Things that made me really think about what I needed from other people and where that need came from. And I remember those conversations vividly. Did it change my behavior as a 20 something until I was a 30 something? Not at all. Not one bit. So even though those were impactful conversations, I still had work to do to unravel it for myself and then I could, begin the process that is still ongoing of naming and letting go of traumas that happened when I was a kid.
And like, speaking of traumas, like, if you are in a relationship with someone who may be an alcoholic and it's getting to the point where that alcoholism is, affecting their physical health and something like that, or they're doing stuff while drunk that they shouldn't, you don't want to have this fantasy that love will ultimately fix it. Now, again, what you mentioned before in terms of support, that's a beautiful thing. You can support somebody, but they still have to want that help. So that means understanding that if they don't accept that help, then you got to protect yourself at the end of the day. If for that very specific instance that I'm mentioning.
I don't know, Tim. I don't know about that. I think it might be your trauma talking.
Why do you say that?
So here's what I see in that statement, that people have to, at the end of the day, people have to want it, and your job is to protect yourself. That to me sounds like a person who has been hurt by other people and who hasn't come to a point of balance with that, because I feel it's angry, but not to psychoanalyze you.
No, not at all.
No, not at all. I just think that we shouldn't, if somebody doesn't want to accept your help, you don't have to cut them off and say, I'm not going to interact with you at all. You don't have to protect yourself from the person. You can, and this may be what you meant, limit the amount of emotional labor that you put into that relationship.
Well, like I said, I was referring to a very specific thing here. And, we're talking about like if you are in a cohabiting, romantic relationship with somebody and someone is so much of an alcoholic that you can't pay rent or you can't pay your mortgage or something like that, that's protecting yourself. So I did not emphasize my specifics because at that particular time I was referring to just that one type of particular deal. Now, to your point, yeah, like does every situation require protecting yourself? And no, but sometimes in a relationship, it does. You can love that person, but if that person is, like clearing out your bank account without you knowing for drugs, then, you do got to do something. You can still support.
Yeah, I mean, you have to choose the ways that you support, and the ways that you support need to be absolutely accepting and open to and letting go of the idea that you get anything in return for that.
Right.
Because you don't.
You don't. How about I go on to the next one?
Yeah.
All right. Number 3, recognize the role of fantasy during and after the relationship, a byproduct of the trauma. During the relationship, you fantasize that if you just worked hard enough, the other person would heal and rise to love you unconditionally. But then once it ends and they're with someone else, you fantasize they've taken all you taught them and applied it to a new relationship. You might feel mad that your healing efforts are benefiting a new partner, but this leaves you stuck in an illusion that keeps you in the role of victim, as the one not chosen, and as that child who lacked agency. I worked with Lauren to let go, and this is a person that the author worked with that mentioned in the article that we recommend you check out by going to our show description. The link will be there. I worked with Lauren to let go of the illusion that her ex's new relationships were perfect. We agreed that unless these men actually did a lot of self-growth work, they were likely repeating their same behaviors with someone who puts up with it. Granted, it can feel unfair to think that a new partner is benefiting from all the ways you tried to heal your ex. Remember that in all likelihood, they probably aren't that different. And if they are, your heart can feel satisfied that you helped someone become healthier. I know when it came to my marriage, I didn't necessarily have to deal with this, because once it ended, it was like, thank God, you know. But I have also dealt with this in other circumstances, though, other relationships that went south. So I can definitely relate to that particular feeling, because like in your head, like you get this idea of what the future should have been. And if you see that person with somebody else and they're living that future that you didn't have with that person, then it can be like hurtful. It can sting even worse than, the relationship ending itself. And, I do think, again, the article points out, take the time to do that work with yourself, because you can, with time, appreciate the fact that, just because they're off living a different type of life doesn't mean that there aren't other issues going on in the relationship that they currently have. And even if they are happy, so what? Be happy for that. Compersion is good in this particular instance.
Of course. Of course, if we can be happy for people that they have gained skills, that they have found a relationship or created a relationship that works for them, it is possible to be happy for them, but not if you would feel bad that they were taking everything you taught them and giving it to someone else, because that's still in your trauma response. If that was just, if you were so clear headed about things that you could really see the person for who they were or who they are, and, honor that they're learning and growing just like everybody else, you can come from that point of view. It's possible to feel happy for someone, even if you were involved with them, even if you really helped them out and they kind of then dumped you or whatever, because you're going to go on too, just like they went on. And as I've gotten older, it's only gotten better, the relationships that I have. I think because I get better and better at choosing, and I get better and better at having boundaries and other stuff like that, that is really important for healthy relationships. Because I can't let myself be victimized by you. I can't victimize myself on your behalf. If I do those things, I'm a victim, but of myself.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, I know, since I've used this show as therapy, apparently, I mean, there are plenty of previous episodes that showcase how I've, struggled with this at times. And I think it is important to get to that place in life to understand just how fluid relationships with anybody can be. People can come into your life and be in your life for a long time. Sometimes they're going to be in your life for a short time. You don't want to put people into places that they're not ultimately meant to be. You ultimately want to find a way to be able to essentially appreciate that moment as much as you can, because that moment that you have at that particular time, the present, is all you really got. And I think, and I am far from perfect, obviously, even though we joked about that at the start here. I think I've been open about my flaws as a human being in a lot of ways, but I know too that I've also don't want to ever repeat major relationship stupidities that I've done in over the years as well. So, it reflection, people, it helps. You want to go on to number 4?
Yeah, let's go on to number 4, some of the good stuff. And that is, shine a light on your pattern. Turn all that love inward. Look at how skilled you are at believing in the other person, seeing their potential, rooting for them, being patient with them, and knowing that you hold the power to give that to yourself. Believe in yourself, believe in your path, and believe in your potential. Learn how to receive. Learn that you have a right to boundaries. Know that you are worthy of the love that you want. And I couldn't agree more. Obviously, I kind of just said the exact same thing. You really have to figure out, by trying, or at least this is what happened to me, is that I had a lot of not self-love. And I have some self-love now. I won't say, of course, it's all a work in progress. But when I didn't have that, I had to practice doing that acts of love towards myself. And I had to make sure that they were healthy ones, that it wasn't drugs or gambling or overspending or eating too much or all of the things that we do that we think we're rewarding ourselves with. And that's what society tells us, right? Is if you have enough stuff, if you're the one with the most stuff, when you die, you win, which makes no sense because then you're dead.
Yeah. I mean, to me, rewarding yourself is, for me, the small moments. Reward, like one thing I've talked about in the show that I like to reward myself on that makes me really happy is Saturdays when I can birdwatch with my cats.
Mm-hmm.
Just sitting there at the door of the deck with the cats, with, the nuts out for the crows to come. Just a beautiful moment. Do that for
Yeah,
yourself.
do that for yourself. Give yourself permission to take that time for yourself to do whatever it is you want to do that makes you feel that peace, that makes you feel that happy to be in the moment.
Also, on the flip side, appreciate that you have such compassion that you want to give to another human being as well. That's not a bad thing. You can have both, you know?
Sure, absolutely you can have both. I feel like I have a lot of both in my life right now.
Do you have anything more to say on that, or do you want me to dive into the last point here?
So, I guess just what I was saying about practicing is that if you can only do one thing that is good for you, that is makes you feel good in the moment, that's huge. And that's something that you should reward yourself for because it's so difficult to be in those moments when you're alone, when nothing exciting is happening, when you're not in the beautiful nature, when you're dealing with your everyday life. How can you enjoy those moments as much as possible and then try to do little things?
Exactly. Well said.
Thanks.
All right.
Let's go on to the next one.
All right. The next one is the last one, number 5. Release relationship trauma from your body. Trauma lives in our bodies but is expressed in our relationships. In order to not repeat this dynamic, find outlets for the stuck emotional patterns that live in your body. Find ways to increase your window of emotional tolerance and regulate your nervous system through yoga and working with a somatic psychologist. This will prevent you from looking for someone else to be your savior as a way to distract you from your discomfort because you'll have tools to shine light on your pain and release it from within. Do I think you necessarily need to do yoga? No, but you could switch working out in that. You could switch, riding a bike on that. You could switch taking a long walk on that.
Yeah, anything that where you're moving your body, I think.
Yeah,
That's really what somatic means, is that you're using movement in your body. You're moving your body in order to identify and heal trauma.
yeah. And going back to yoga too, like if there are any male-oriented people out there that for some reason think, oh, yoga's a girl's thing. No, it's not. No, it's not. If it makes you feel better, there are options like DDP Yoga. DDP's Diamond Dallas Page is a former professional wrestler who now owns and runs a yoga studio that does stuff online and everything like that. It is not bad to do yoga. You can feel quite good doing it. It's just a matter of making it a habit if you really want to do it on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And, you know,
YouTube is an option as well.
yes, YouTube is an option. YouTube is a great option. There's so much yoga on YouTube. It is, you can put whatever you put somatic yoga in there and you'll get some really good flows that are intended not to work your body, but to work your emotions that live in your body. And any kind of practice can do that where there's movement. So, like sweeping the floor, gardening, like anything where you're moving and you're aware of your body, that is sorts of replaces your awareness of your feelings. So you kind of become less sensitive. And by practicing self soothing to your nervous system, you don't get yourself in more complicated situations because you're making better decisions because you're not living in cortisol and other hormones that cause you to act erratically or without good judgment.
Exactly. And as the last sentence in the article states, you may have been hurt in the past and have scars from these relationships, but these very scars bring wisdom, depth, and an opportunity for self-love. Reflect on them. And yeah, I mean, we bring this article to you today in a spirit of urging people to just love themselves more and just reflect.
Yeah. And, be gentle with yourself while you're doing that. And we all have negative coping mechanisms, I believe. Most people have some kind of negative coping mechanism. It could be, feeding into your own emotional state.
Yeah, I mean, think of how many people who, raise hand, think you're the absolute worst person in the world, but then other people are like, you're great, you know? It's easy to fall into that trap,
Yeah,
and it's hard to get out of it, but it can be done.
it absolutely can be.
All right, any other thoughts?
No, just wishing everybody well and, hoping that you come out of the hearing what we're talking about feeling good about yourself and even all of those things that you're doing, quote unquote, wrong in relationship. That's fine. It's all good. You're all on your journey. So don't beat up on yourself if you haven't attained the levels of enlightenment that the article is encouraging us all to strive for.
Yeah, simple analogy here. Think of it like riding a bike. If imagine when you first learned how to ride a bike, if you fell, skinned your knee, and you decided I'm never riding a bike again, you're not going to learn how, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to relationships, they're ever evolving. You will never get to a point to where everything is cool because some new complication will always come, and it's just how you deal with it, how you brush yourself off, get back on that bike, and keep riding.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Everybody be cool, because this is season 3 of the Church of Tarantino podcast, and we're about to get medieval on your ass. I'm your host, the Reverend Scott K, and for our 3rd season here at the church, we'll be taking an in-depth look at the film that not only changed cinema, but made
We out the gimp.
and
Royale with cheese.
a part of the pop culture lexicon practically overnight. I'm of course talking about Pulp Fiction as it turns 30.
We should have shotguns with this kind of deal.
Along the way, we'll also be taking an investigative look at the psyche of the characters from the world of Pulp Fiction to see what makes them tick on our character study series.
Well, let's not start sucking each other's dicks quite yet.
And over on our Inglourious Blue Ball series, we'll be taking a deep dive into the numerous project announcements spewed from QT's mouth over the past 30 plus years to give you the level of blue balls these unrealized projects have left us with.
I hid this uncomfortable hunk of metal up my ass 2 years.
So grab yourself a big kahuna burger and a $5 shake and stop on down to the Church of Tarantino and become a member of the coolest fucking church around.
God damn, Jimmy. This some serious gourmet shit.
Now touching you 3 times a month.
Professor Aubrey has a package in her hands that we have to say is quite delicious.
It is, Tim. It's Brazil from Coffee Bros. An amazing coffee with notes of cocoa and cherry candy.
Nice.
Delicious.
Indeed it was. Like you and I, we both drink coffee in very different ways. I need it, 9,000 degrees hot. And me, I make my coffee and then put in as many ice cubes as I can. I'm like the guy from Clerks, what am I supposed to drink this coffee hot? Type of guy. But you tried it your way, I tried it my way, and we both really enjoyed the flavor of this particular flavor of coffee.
Absolutely. It is a relatively new roastery in New York, New York. Those little town blues.
Yep.
Taking the Coffee Bros away.
Exactly.
Anyway, they're relatively new. They've been roasting since 2019.
Yes, but they do have great connections around the world in the coffee growing areas to be able to get the best beans, to be able to give their customers the best product. And you, our friends at home, if you go to coffeebros.com and you order your own batch of this coffee or any other of the delicious brands of coffee that they have on their website, in the promo code spot, you put FTN10, we're going to be able to save you 10%.
That's right. 10%. It's going to be like $1.50. It's going to be awesome.
But that's what friends are for.
That's what friends are for.
That's right.
$1.50 when you need it.
Exactly. I mean, you won't be able to get on the city bus, but you will be able to save some money to be able to get some wonderful coffee. Again, head to coffeebros.com and in the promo code box, put in FTN10 and you will be able to have some delicious coffee.
Yep.
Drink away, people. Well, that was a good talk. Before we wrap things up for the week, though, how have you been?
I've been really good. It's the first dawning of summer vacation, so I'm really enjoying that. I am still working, of course, because work never stops, but I'm not working as intensely as I was, and I'm not teaching night classes, which makes life difficult.
Yes. But speaking of not making life difficult, we ended up doing that for the cats this week.
We sure did. I was just thinking, and that means I have more time to hang out with the cats and like pay attention to what they're doing because, I work from home, so I spend a lot of time with the cats, but I'm very focused on working. So I don't, I'll pet them every once in a while, but I'm not playing with them or snuggling with them during the day.
And, when it comes to me, with my 9 to 5 being what it is, I'm rather active throughout my day. So coming home, I'm not necessarily feeling like, hey, I can spend 15 minutes with you with this, toy on the end of a wand here. So ended up getting the door hang toy.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that has a little mouse attached to it, and both cats absolutely went nuts for it. And I was surprised, the oldest Mimsy, that she got into it. But man, that first day, like, was funny as hell. Like, she would play with it, swat at it, and then she would get it in her mouth, and then she would walk towards the bedroom, but it would snap out because it's on like a little rubber band elastic type of deal. And then she would go back and get it, put it in her mouth, and then walk to the bedroom, and it would snap out of her mouth again. And then at one point she stopped after it snapped out of her mouth. And I saw her, and I knew she was thinking. And she was thinking, what is the way I can get this to the bedroom? So, of course, she chose the most logical path of getting it in her mouth and running as fast as she could to the bedroom, and it snapped out, and it ended up hitting the overhang and everything. But that was hilarious to watch. Now, the set I got came with two, which is good because the cat's already chewed through one of them.
Yeah, it was Annie. It wasn't the cats. It was Annie. I watched her do it. She chewed on the bungee cord. It's very thin. She chewed on it until she broke it.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me, which is why we got her one of those cat twigs. I don't know what they call it, but it's like,
Silvervine.
yeah, silver vine that apparently gives them feelings of euphoria or something like that. So they've both been nibbling on a stick.
Yes, they love that stick. It's pretty funny.
Yes. But anyway, that was fun to watch. Speaking of fun to watch, but before I get to that point, I do want to bring up just real quickly death of a couple of icons. One, Donald Sutherland passed away a few weeks back.
Yeah, that's very sad.
Very sad. And today, as we record this, word came out that Sika Anoai, one half of the Wild Samoan tag teams, father of Roman Reigns, has passed away at 79.
Well, that's a good long life. And Donald Sutherland also had a good long life.
Yeah, he was 88. Like, the only regret I have for Donald Sutherland is that he did not guest star on 24 as Jack Bauer's dad.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, and it was supposed to happen, but for whatever reason, Donald backed out, and James Cromwell ended up playing his dad. But different story for a different day. But want to end up on a positive note here, but also still kind of tie wrestling into it. Last night, as we record this, we watched the documentary Let the Canary Sing on Paramount Plus, the documentary about the life of Cyndi Lauper.
That is right. We watched the Cyndi Lauper documentary.
And kind of like the Dolly Parton, like a Dolly Parton documentary or the Willie Nelson documentary that we mentioned before. This is the type of documentary that is, one, honest, but two, at the end of it, you're just going to have so much love for them.
Yeah.
Like one, on the one hand, I know you appreciated just how much she was cognizant, even at the very start of her career, of inclusion. And then me, at the start of her career, I loved that the documentary, showed that she very much appreciated her experience in professional wrestling. Just one hell of a documentary. But what's one thing about that documentary that really struck you?
I think was the inclusiveness in the early 80s. The fact that she was, welcoming of people in the LGBTQAO community, as well as, that includes trans people, very early on, compared to many people who didn't even have an awareness of what trans identity was in the early 80s.
Yeah, I mean, she was one of the first celebrities that was speaking out about AIDS before, like Elton John came along or Elizabeth Taylor came along or something like that. And
Yeah, when we still didn't know how it was transmitted, it was killing people, and there was nothing that we could do about it. And it
yeah,
was killing people with like really terrible associated diseases and problems.
yeah. I mean, because my understanding is like most people don't necessarily die of AIDS; they die
No.
of complications that come about because of it.
Yeah, because it's an immune suppressing.
Yeah.
So now, and it would have been interesting, I think, for her to talk about how she feels about that now, given that people with HIV that are HIV positive live long, normal lives on medication.
There are commercials with AIDS medicine now. Commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah, HIV medication. Like, that would have been unheard of in the 80s. Unfortunately, in a better world, we would have tackled this disease at the very start and not do the biblical bullshit that led to countless deaths. I mean, Reagan is a horrible human being for a lot of reasons. One of them being how he mishandled the AIDS crisis.
Yeah.
It's not that people wouldn't have died if he had done the right thing, but like a lot less people would have if we had thrown money at it the right way. I mean, look, like take the pandemic, for instance, for as mismanaged as that was handled, it was still pretty quick that we got something in place to where we can get society halfway running again, right?
Yeah, and they figured out how it was transmitted really quickly so that we knew how to adapt to avoid getting infected until there was a vaccine.
Yeah, but
There was no talk of that in the 80s. So anyway, like she and people of color, like BIPOC people were all over her videos.
at a time when MTV was specifically playing essentially, they weren't saying it's music for white people, but it was generally music that only white people would listen to.
Right. And then, black people had their own channel. I mean, what kind of segregation is that? Like this idea that black people consume a certain type of entertainment and white people consume a certain type of entertainment and they should be separate. Like, what does that sound like?
Fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like segregation, which I thought we decided 60 years ago was a bad idea.
Well, as we see in polling today, there are some who disagree with you, sadly.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back to the positive, though. Like Cyndi Lauper, at the end of the day, like I mentioned, is one of those people like a Dolly Parton, like a Willie Nelson. Cyndi just I didn't even think about it either, how much of an impact her song made until they brought it up in the documentary. And I remember seeing it when like the first Women's March happened in Portland. You had, like the marches for abortion a couple of years ago when they overturned Roe v. Wade, which I think as we record is 2 years to the day. Girls just want to have fundamental rights. Yeah, they're tying her song into it, but it showed that her song had quite the impact that she intended. And I think Boy George in the documentary said, what a novel concept, telling women that they can have a good time, they can have fun, damn it.
Yeah. Such a great song, such a great artist. It is unfortunate that she hasn't been, I don't think, appreciated in the way that some other icons have been appreciated later in life.
Donna. Yeah.
Exactly. Or, many other people.
Yeah.
But bring it back to the positive. She's amazing, and she also is gorgeous, and she also had the coolest hair, And it was great to see all the old videos and see her outfits, and just remember watching that as a kid, as a young girl, and thinking to myself, that's what I want to be like. I want to be dancing in the street wearing exactly what I want to wear. That looks like fun.
Yeah. Definitely an icon. She got me as a fan the moment she got Captain Lou Albano in her video, and it was great seeing a clip, because they actually had a clip from Captain Lou back in the 80s, and he was just Captain Lou was never going to do a standard. Yes, I will give you the answer here. Blah blah blah. He was always in professional wrestler mode, and hearing him talk was funny. They interviewed Wendy Richter, but also on the flip side too, like they could have gone into a little more detail. Cindy's involvement in the women's match, Wendy Richter versus I think it was Leilani Kai at the first WrestleMania. She helped bring attention to women's wrestling that wasn't there before. She was, without Cyndi Lauper, like maybe professional wrestling as we know it today wouldn't be as big because they didn't have that big of an output. But most importantly, that was the first time a women's wrestling match was treated successfully, and that's because she was there as Wendy Richter's manager. Now, yeah, part of the show, I get it, it's predetermined, but she showed that people would gladly pay money to see women wrestle.
Yep.
We have Cyndi Lauper to thank for that.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, Cindy.
Damn right. Anything else you want to say to all of our friends at home?
Well, as always, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yes, tell all your friends about it too. If you like what you hear, spread the word. If you don't like it, great.
Stop listening to it.
Yeah, well, you know what? I was going to be gracious. I was going to say thank you for checking us out. If we're not your cup of tea, nice knowing you. But if you do like what you hear, spread the word. Pretend we're religion, folks.
Absolutely. We need your help. We would like for our podcast to reach more people. So share it with your friends, share it with your family. The content, I think, is useful, and, we're hilarious.
Damn right we are.
So, tell your friends.
Damn right. All right, so for the most electrifying professor in podcasting today, each Monday we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Farewell.
And now this stupid computer. I can't believe this. Making me log back in again when it's never done that before. There must have been an update. Fuck Apple. Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
On YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.